So how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks for the chance to get together and chat for a little bit.
No, no problem at all. I'm happy to be talking to you. Thanks for coming on. So, do you want to just start off with a bit of explanation about how you became a composer in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. Back in high school, started playing guitar when I was a freshman, and kind of hid myself in my attic bedroom and self-taught and started playing with a band towards junior year, senior year. Did a lot of like singer-songwriter type stuff, and then going off to college at the University of Richmond, ended up getting another band together down there, and we toured around a little bit. Got to play with some other big names at that time, and then for a couple years afterwards, ended up staying in the Richmond area. Did a little bit more touring. A little bit of bartending to actually make some money, and then the other members of the band were like, "Oh, we want to start families and get real jobs." At that point, it was kind of like, "Okay, what's the next step here?" And
Yeah.
it was suggested to me to check out the USC film scoring program. So I did. I flew out here and just to sit in on a couple classes and see what it was all about. And I had been very interested in film music, but didn't really know a whole lot about it. Didn't know a lot of the film composers that were working at the time. So unlike a lot of composers, I didn't really have, I didn't have this dream when I was a young kid to, grow up and do this. But I quickly got sucked in. So,
Yeah.
as soon as I came out here. So I applied to the film scoring program and got in. And from there, started working with Christophe Beck and was with him doing some administrative and technical stuff and then additional writing for about 8 years. And a few years ago, started branching out on my own. And now here I am.
So some of your shows, and films and stuff, shows you've been working on, Stinky and Dirty Show for Amazon, Dino Trucks, which is back for its third season on Netflix on the 7th of October, so there's that coming up. Be Cool Scooby Doo you've done as well. You've recently done the Keeping Up with the Joneses, which is a movie starring John Hamm, Gal Gadot, Isa Fisher, and Zach Galifianakis. So yeah, doing fairly well, I think, with your your composing stuff. One of the reasons we got the video running is because you have this interesting collection of instruments, I am told. So so yeah, really, do you want to sort of talk us through what you've been collecting,
Sure.
and how you kind of got started with collecting this stuff?
Absolutely. So a friend of mine had gone to this place called the Melrose Trading Post, which is basically like a flea market every Sunday.
Right.
And I'd been there a few times, and there's always some interesting things, and whether it's vendors selling food that they've made or furniture that they've made or whatever, it's always it's a very cool and eclectic gathering of people.
Yeah.
So I was turned on to this guy named Rich Briggs and his cigar box guitars, and I just thought they were very interesting. So I met with him and I checked out a bunch of his stuff, and the first thing that I ended up getting from Rich was this kind of cigar box ukulele.
Oh wow.
Thing. So he literally took a cigar box and turned it into a little ukulele, and actually. I mean, it sounds really, really good. And he put some electronics in here so you can plug in it if you want.
Oh, cool.
And it stays in tune, and it's got a little bit more of a unique sound to it than just a normal Guitar Center ukulele.
Yeah.
Consumer brands like that. So that was the first thing I got from him, and then the 6 months, 8 months goes by, and then these shows started coming in, and once Stinky Dirty came up, I immediately thought of him, and I gave him a call, and I was like, listen, there's this concept of, these two kids that are a trash truck and a digger truck, and they need to be able to help their friends get out of situations, and it's all about using trash to, solve a problem. And so what better thing to do than try to make some found instruments. And so when I contacted him again, and kind of gave him a couple of, hey, what about, a hubcap type thing that, again, it's, it just has a, just a little bit different sounding than just a normal guitar or banjo.
Yeah.
And, and he then did like a copper pot type one. Again, this sounds very cool when it's plugged in. And then finally, the one thing that I wanted to have him just experiment with was building this bass out of a wine box. So he actually took 2 wine boxes and put them together here.
Oh, wow.
And then strung it all up. And there's not a lot of sound of it without it being plugged in, but, again, it's still... It's a little bit jangly. Again, it's just giving you a different sound, something that's a little bit more unique than, the standard run-of-the-mill, whether it's a sample or someone actually coming in to play an upright bass or something. So it's probably hard to hear over the...
it's coming across quite well, actually.
Okay.
So... are you always going to this guy to help you build stuff, or have you tried doing some stuff yourself as well?
For this particular thing, I have gone to Rich every time. But in terms of other non-stringed instruments, I have ventured into that realm. Here's another one over here. That is... Now, this took me a few months to actually make because I had to, get rid of everything that was inside.
It's a hardship, yeah.
When flipped over, I put a certain amount of water in each one of these bottles.
Yeah.
In order to tune them, and so you can just kind of. So only 3 notes on this one. Grander scale, you'd be able to, actually have 12 plus bottles. However, take this and, do something fast and then manipulate it maybe a little bit in some programs that I use. And you can come up with some really cool stuff and, layered on top of one another and kind of give these shimmery, almost insecty type sound to it. So it's a lot of stuff to at least start with and then kind of move on from there with,
Yeah, I mean, with you dealing quite a lot with kids shows, those sort of sounds have got to help out because it just adds that extra dimension to it.
I love it so much, and it gives me just a different type of inspiration, just to go down a different road than something that I may have already done before or pulled out of a bag of tricks or whatever. So this is it's giving me a new starting point and just kind of invigorating. So it's fun.
Yeah. It's very cool. It's interesting because you tend to find that the 2 places where those sort of instruments work tend to be either kids shows or right at the other end of the scale, horror.
Exactly.
So I mean the other guy that springs to mind that I know does a lot of this sort of stuff is Nate Barr.
Yep.
Who has all sorts of weird and wonderful instruments, but his are kind of made out of human bone and and weird stuff like that, So
I'm sure we could probably trade, instruments.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love that. Yeah. I know he also has a full blown Hollywood Wurlitzer, from one of the studios.
Yeah.
Built into his house. He was building a studio which had the Wurlitzer built in as well. So if you ever happen to come across Nate, it's probably worth kind of getting together and swapping instruments. I'm sure he'd like that.
Excellent.
But yes, so you worked on those kids shows. What did you do for Frozen? Because you were involved for Frozen, weren't you?
Yeah. So when I was working with Christophe Beck, this random animation came into us. We had worked on Paperman, which was a Disney short.
Yeah.
Forget what that. I think maybe it was in front of Wreck-It Ralph, maybe a couple years before.
Okay. Yeah.
And that kind of led to Chris being, his name being put in the hat to do this movie called Frozen, which we didn't really know too much about, or nobody thought it was going to be as huge as it was. So, it's just another princess movie, and, this is exciting. We're stoked about it, but, we didn't really know. And then we got a picture, and then started getting, much more into it, and from there it just kind of, developed. And did a lot of the score producing, whether running sessions, just very hands-on and involved in everything that Chris was doing on the project. So ended up doing what it did, and it's been amazing. So
yeah, I mean that's a hell of a project. I mean, I guess as you say, you don't know beforehand what's going to take off and what going to isn't. It isn't. That's insane that you ended up on that. You also worked on the Muppets as well.
Yep.
And I mean, that's a great musical movie as well.
Yeah, the nostalgia that came along with that, just because growing up, I remember seeing Muppets Take Manhattan and Muppets in Space, and seeing all these movies, and then actually being a part of this next generation, or whether remake, sequel type of route. But it's just great to actually be involved in those movies. So it's a lot of fun.
And then sort of at the other end of the scale from that, The Hangover as well. So you can't kind of get too much kind of end to end there.
Well, and the best thing in being involved on all of these projects was the amount that I was able to learn from Chris doing all these different because animation is a very different beast than live action kid stuff versus hard R comedy. Everything is a very different approach, and it was very beneficial to get a very hands-on experience for all those years and being involved in so many different projects, and it's really helped guide my career in the direction that it's going.
So yeah, you've got as you say, it's very different doing kind of animation to live action. Is Keeping Up with the Joneses kind of your first solo big movie thing then?
That is the biggest to date. Just before this was Absolutely Fabulous.
Oh, of course, yes.
Which again, that's kind of down the hard R route. Which I remember seeing the show, a few years ago, or as I guess in its many iterations.
Yeah.
But then when the opportunity came up to actually be part of the film and continuing the saga with Eddie, and it was just an amazing opportunity. So there was that, and then Joneses kind of came right on the heels of when Absolutely Fabulous was wrapping up. So
how did you end up with the Absolutely Fabulous gig?
There was another composer on for a little while, and the comedy just wasn't exactly playing right, and then they ended up retemping the film. And a lot of the temp music that they put in there was stuff that I had been very involved in. Right. Some of Chris's stuff, some of my stuff. And so when the question came up, it's like, what are we going to do here? This is really working. This other composer isn't necessarily getting it. Then I ended up getting a call and say, hey, what do you think about this? And you have 2.5 weeks to do the entire score.
Oh my God.
So I said, absolutely.
That's insane timing to work for.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I've heard of that sort of thing for TV shows, but never a film. That's ridiculous.
It was a very tight turnaround, but for the amount of music in it, it was about 35 minutes of music, so it wasn't as extreme as a wall-to-wall, animation or something like that, where you can be pushing, 60, 70, 80 plus minutes of music. So it was a little more doable in that respect. It wasn't as crazy of a schedule. But still, it was pretty intense, but it was a lot of fun. I never ended up actually meeting any of the filmmakers until the premiere in New York.
Yeah.
And so it was just over email or, an occasional phone call, but it's kind of like, okay, do your thing and, let's make this work.
That's nuts. When you start with a project like that, or any project, do you have an instrument that you particularly go to get yourself going, or is there like you go to a piano first, or do you go to something else, or is it just whatever happens to be near to hand?
It really kind of depends on the project. For the projects that they know that they want maybe a more unique sound to them. I might, try to do some research and find the instrument that, might be featured or be the one solo instrument or some sort of interesting percussion or, for instance, the stuff that Rich Briggs made for me.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get some inspiration. And that happened with Stinky and Dirty. With Dino Trucks, the direction was this kind of Blue Man Group stomp thing. They were, they kind of were pushing in that direction, and that's what they were saying. Didn't really know exactly, where that was going to lead. So I ended up going out and buying these things called boom whackers and these Hoya tubes, which they're all pitched percussion. Yeah. But again, these boom whackers are I have a couple over here. They're kids' toys. And so they're just tubes that happen to have pitches.
Yeah.
So the idea of, having these and how can I use these to make other cool and interesting sounds, as opposed to just banging them on the floor or something. So, just like sitting around, you can kind of like bend the pitch a little bit. Just try to find different things that you can do with them. And then there's a set of tubes that I have so you can like play the tubes with these tubes. Now you're combining different pitches. And so it came up with a bunch of different stuff there, and then eventually started adding orchestra on top of it to make it feel a little bit more massive like the trucks that they are. But then for something like Keeping Up with the Joneses, I will sit down at a piano usually for something that feels a little bit more melodic. And if it's something a little bit more groove based, then I'll go back to, a normal guitar and just kind of put something together and then go from there.
Yeah, that's very cool. I like the tubes. The tubes are a great kind of, because they sort of say like truck and car to you and stuff. Yeah. They're good. So, moving on to some slightly more general questions. What would you say the best piece of advice somebody's ever given you is?
To not give up and keep pushing forward, because honestly, there are a lot of road bumps in this career.
Yeah.
So if failure hits you and it's like it becomes devastating to you, then it's going to be hard for you to be able to push on. So it's just take it as it comes, and each failure is a learning experience. And so in the same respect, even when you're writing music and maybe you get a note back from a director or producer, don't take it so personally where it's not personally affecting your, the music that you've written or anything. It's you're working together with this team to create one product together and to make it the best possible thing that you can do. So they all kind of play into one another.
Cool. That's good. Yeah. No, you should. I mean, anybody that's tried to get somewhere in Hollywood, I think never give up is definitely the way to go. What career do you think you'd be doing if you weren't doing this?
I honestly very much enjoyed bartending. I enjoyed talking to different people every single night while working, hearing different stories, and just really interacting. So plus making the drinks was fun. So doing that for 2 years, and then I could still see myself being there.
Maybe gigging on the side. Do you have any musical recommendations? Are there any bands that you listen to or things that you feel that people should be aware of?
I kind of love this whole. I grew up a lot with like singer-songwriter type of artists, whether it's Dave Matthews Band to Guster to Rusted Root, and that kind of little jam bandy type stuff. But as musical tastes have progressed, Mike Snow and Passion Pit and some of these other bands that have these electronic elements but still have good storytelling behind them are, I don't know, that's something that I gravitate towards.
So. Cool. Yeah, good. I love things like Guster. They're great. So, what are you working on next?
Currently working on season 3 of Dino Trucks is coming out. However, there are a couple more seasons in the works. So that's kind of just an ever ongoing project, at least for the next year or so, which is great because, you know, it's a lot of music every couple of weeks, and the opportunity to kind of stretch the boundaries for every episode is there. And so, you know, being able to, what am I going to do for this new character that's coming into this episode? Like, what kind of cool thing can I do? What kind of thing can I find around this room, or go into the kitchen and find and turn into some sort of musical motif for them? So, you know, I kind of get sucked into that. You know, if there's nothing else going on, then I'll spend more and more time just creating crazy things.
Do you find yourself staring at inanimate objects going, I wonder what noise I can get out of that?
Absolutely, every single day. I have a 2-year-old son, and I will venture into his room at least once a week while he's at school, and, you know, be like, oh, what does he have in here that I can, you know, turn into something musical?
If he's bashing stuff around, you're like, what did you just hit?
Show daddy.
That's awesome. We have 2 questions that we always ask people at the end of an interview. One of it is, what TV shows are you watching at the moment?
Let's see. I just started This Is Us, which I think just started last week, actually.
Yes,
first episode, good.
Getting that soon, yeah.
And then I've been kind of wrapped up in Homeland, even though it's a little bit of an older thing. I never watched it up until about maybe 2 months ago, and then started with that. So I'm about halfway through. And let's see, what else is American Horror Story. It's just that and Grey's Anatomy. I just can't give up for some reason.
Some amazing music in American Horror Story as well. So,
very cool.
Yeah. And the last question is, if you had the opportunity to work on any show, past, present, or future, which show would it be?
That is a good question. I honestly could not tell you the answer to that right now. I'd have to think about that. I'll shoot you an email after this. Okay.
Okay. No problem. All right. Well, that's all my questions. So, thank you for coming on and talking. It's been great. I love the instruments. They're fantastic. I'm very tempted to try and pick one of those up. They're superb. My brother would go nuts for one of those kind of banjo ukulele things. They're just great.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for being on.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Cheers. Bye.